Betty. My name is Jacqueline Suverin, and I am a technical trainer at Sumo Logic and would like to welcome you to today's Sumo Security and Compliance Certification course that we're offering. Today's course is going to be going into a lot about how to build queries for security issues, as well as we're going to show you what we have for compliance and some queries, as well as dashboards and templates that are supported for compliance. I'm out of the Colorado area. I know that most of you are probably somewhere in Australia, New Zealand. I'll just type where I'm coming in from. So I'm actually in my evening, but very excited, early evening for me. So I'm out of Colorado in the US. I'll just type that in. And once again, my name is Jacqueline Suverin. I'll put that in for you guys. Now today's training is going to be about 55 minutes first of presentations and labs. And I have in the presentation, I also have a short demo because I think it's very good for you to see as much as you can of the types of things you can do and the things that are already available to you with our out-of-the-box capability. Then I always try to give a little short break, just a 5-minute break, so that we can kind of finish up the training with the hands-on labs. So after a little bit of presentation, we'll get right into the labs, and then you'll wrap up with all the lab activities. Now, these labs tonight will actually give you a takeaway. So you'll actually create what we call a starter SOC dashboard. And I'll actually go over instructions on how you can export that and then import it into your own environment if you'd like to do so. The exam then is the last 1 hour of the 3-hour course today. That's where you can get certified. The course is about 20, I haven't counted them. I think it's now up to maybe about 25 questions. So we've been working really hard, and it's still kind of a preliminary exam because we only released this like a month ago at our Illuminate conference. So we're still kind of finessing the exam, but you can take the exam and get certified with us, which with that, you can actually post that out on LinkedIn if you'd like to, as well as you'll have a PDF of it. Where's people coming in from? Are a lot of you from maybe the Melbourne, Sydney area? I'm just kind of curious. I know you can't talk. I could actually allow, this is a smaller group than last night, so I could probably allow you guys all to talk. Now, if you don't want to talk, you don't have to, but if you would like to speak up and ask a question at any time, I do not mind. Just go ahead and unmute your mic. But if you, in the meantime, just want to keep your mic on mute, that's fine. If you do have a question, you can post it into the Q&A. That way I won't lose track of it. But you can also do it anonymously in the Q&A. And I'll try to also monitor the chat window where I just said I was from Colorado. All right, and I'll be showing you where these slides are here in a moment. I'm just kind of curious, were some of you in the training yesterday for fundamentals that I did yesterday? Are there quite a few of you that have taken that at this point? I'll put that in the chat. Okay, so hello. Okay, so yeah, so quite a few of you are already chiming in. Now, if you didn't take it, no worries, because you'll just be going right through a lot of queries and dashboards, but it's all guided instruction. It's just like, if you haven't taken it, it might be helpful to go back and try to take the fundamentals, just because we cover across the board basics that you might not get to know if you don't take that training. And we also have a self-paced course on it, so you don't have to wait until the next time we're offering it. That's a convenient time for you. You can actually go and do self-paced training for that if you'd like. All right, so the agenda tonight, what we're going to be covering is brief introduction on security and compliance. There's a lot more slides that I'm just going to basically be leaving for reference, but if there's a slide that you see in the deck that you would like me to talk a little bit more about, feel free to ask me more about that. But I want to give you the security demo and then spend the bulk of our time in the hands-on labs. So when we get into the labs, the first 5 is what you'll be doing to build the starter SOC dashboard. And as promised, I mentioned to a couple of you yesterday, you were asking about creating parameters and how to handle lookup filters that you can use also for pivoting in dashboards. So that's where you're going to be doing this a few times. You might even get a little like, oh, we're doing that again. But basically, we're going to build a 5-panel dashboard, which is really cool. And then we're going to go over then after the break. So we'll take a little break. And then after that, we're going to go through labs 6 through 9. And what 6 and 7 do is they'll explain how to pivot in the dashboards a little bit more. We'll talk about that capability and play around with it. And then lab 7 will be on exporting that dashboard and on instructions on how you could import it into your own corporate environment. And then there's a couple more labs, one on compliance, where we'll be looking at AWS routes. And also there's one on threat intel with CrowdStrike. Now, I see a few more people have joined us. I just want to let you know that I am allowing you to talk. It's not too large of a group tonight. It's under 20, so I don't think we'll speak over each other too much. And I prefer that give you that comfort to be able to take yourself off mute if you just want to chime in and ask something about what I'm doing. I do not mind interruptions at all. And then as promised, the last part, 60 minutes, is doing the certification. The benefit of doing it today, if you would like to get certified, is that I'll also stay on the line. That way, if something comes up and you're getting any frustrations with doing the test or accessing the test or anything like that, I can help you with and get you going. All right. So with that, I'm going to dive right on into talking a little bit about Sumo. Now, I know some of you heard this yesterday, so I'll keep this a little bit more briefer to today and focus maybe more on the things that are applied to security. But this is our continuous intelligence platform. We call it the Sumo Logic Machine Data Analytics Platform. And basically, in a nutshell, that allows you as a customer to bring in all your applications and infrastructure and be able to look at real-time analytics. You can look at it from these different aspects: operational security, business, or global insights. We're going to be focusing today on security analytics. So you're going to be seeing a lot of things to do that. The reason why we built this course is because we saw that with a lot of our customers, a lot of them, there's some enterprise customers that have their own SOC within their company, but there's a lot of customers that we have that are still trying to build that and still trying to acquire capability in that area. So that's basically in a nutshell where this course kind of came from. The platform that we have, it has always been in the cloud. Sumo Logic was designed in the cloud, but it is, even though it's a cloud native platform, it supports then your multi-tenant environment. We'll be doing so many different advanced analytics tonight. Touched on a few in fundamentals, but that's still very basic. So we're going to take what we learned there, and you're going to really see a lot of different options of how to use analytics. It's machine learning, so there's some capability within our tool that will actually lend itself so that you don't have to create everything without some help from us. And then scale and elastic capability. So it's really easy to install the collectors and the sources, and then when necessary to maybe downsize or maybe scale up some aspect of your applications or infrastructure, very easy to do. And then it has API interface, of course, where you can bring in anything that's custom, proprietary, or something that maybe is not one of the 200 apps that we already support in our system. There is also, just by design, it's out-of-the-box security, and I'll hit on that as I go through the presentation, so you'll learn a little bit more about what we do there. And off here to the side, you can see for compliance purposes, these are some of the frameworks that we're highlighting, like SOC 2 PCI, that you might have needs to be able to support for the different auditors that you have to interface and be able to respond to. The full stack integration, so with your data, whether it's on-prem or it's in the cloud, it can be brought into Sumo. Or if it's in other apps, it can be third-party apps and other SaaS environments that are in the cloud. So all of that, as long as you have your data somewhere in text form, we can bring it in. Now, what I'm showing here is I'm talking a little bit now about, security from a point of what our system can do to help you. So as you are set up all this data to come into Sumo, you have this as your centralized log management tool. So basically, you can bring in all your data so that you can see it on a single pane of glass in your SOC. The gaps that I'm talking about over here are showing with basically today, you have so many different transformations that are happening for cloud-based products. So all the migration that's being spent is about basically 6 times the pace of general IT spending. So we see with a lot of our security customers that they have a lot of legacy tools that weren't built for the cloud. And so that's creating a lot of technological limitations. So part of, with our log management here is to offset those gaps that we're seeing for our customers. And then there's shifts that are happening in the threat intel. So what we're seeing here is apps are continuously migrating to the cloud. You could have a simple misconfiguration that can lead to a major data breach. And there's also these, an explosion, if you will, on a lot of attack surfaces, such as devices that come from the Internet of Things. So all these multi-cloud environments, containers, and all your modern apps, just being able to keep on top of that threat landscape is huge. And then last, on the human scale side, security operation is no longer being able to be serviced just by applying more people to the cause. You have too many alerts, so you can't get to them all. The investigation processes are very slow and inefficient, or lacking just in general. And there's also a lack of tool integration, such as multiple consoles, alerts without correlation, false alerts. And you just finding that although there's a lot of MSPs that are surfacing, it's still hard to hire your way out of this problem. So unfortunately, purely trying to outsource isn't always the solution. So being able to get all your data into one centralized log management source is huge. And that's one of the aspects that we're taking advantage of that I'll be demonstrating in this training quite a bit. Now, when you look at being able to have the capability to detect and investigate and respond in real time, this is, all those threats that are coming in across your hybrid multi-cloud environments, which we're kind of showing some of those types here for looking at threat intel, tracking users through the system, just being able to monitor your SaaS performance of your environment. All of that coming in through logs, metrics, and events, then we need to be able to deal with those. We're going to be doing in these investigations, you're going to see a lot of detection and investigation. I have to say response, we need to still develop like another course to talk a little bit more about that, but I'll be hitting on some of that tonight. But there's more to come from us on responding that will be produced in more training. So in order to do this, detect, investigate, and respond, we need to be able to meet compliance deadlines, right? We need to be able to reduce security risks. And we're going to be showing you some of those with these queries that we'll be doing in the labs. We need to be able to identify potential security breaches and neutralize new threat patterns that are emerging. So we want to basically transform this more manual process that might be reactive into more of a proactive automated approach. So for instance, we have a customer, Anheuser-Busch. They're the largest beer manufacturing company in the world. And they've built a SOC using Sumo Logic. And basically, they look at it as they've established now using our tool, this culture of collaboration through using all the cloud security intelligence platform between their NOC and their SOC. So just wanted to give you a little bit about detecting and investigating. Then when it comes to compliance, So besides the security aspect, when you look at things from a compliance perspective, here's kind of a checklist of some of the things that we already have. And so if you just kind of looking down through this, being in compliance has been addressed at Sumo Logic. For example, we have the pre-built PCI compliance dashboards and the queries found underneath the app catalog for firewall, AWS, Palo Alto, Linux, and Windows. All of those can be downloaded within a few minutes, and that will give you immediate capability so that you can use our certification dashboards, as well as we have templates, and I want to kind of go on and show you those. So there's many different cybersecurity frameworks requiring compliance, and so some of these are shown here that we have been working on to support, and so you can see kind of the status of that. And this is kind of put in there for some background, because I know a lot of people are still getting familiar with all the different standards, and that can be huge, just trying to stay on top with all these different standards and supporting them. So taking this a step further, if you, and I'm going to skip past this one, you can go back and look at that for reference if you like, but I want to go on to this one. So when you look at what people are commonly doing right now to support compliance for auditors, is you'll have something where you've extracted maybe a spreadsheet that you've been able to extract some template off of the internet, and or maybe you've applied for some service, some organization, or paid some fees to actually get access to some of these, where then you can start doing your checklist and supporting all of the different standards in some kind of Excel spreadsheet. But what we want to get people, what we're working with a lot of our customers for compliance, is we're moving them toward what auditors really want to see, which is being able to collaborate with you, where they can see real time what you've done using templates. So our dashboard framework can actually support these templates, and I'll show you one in the demo. So this is one for CMMC, which is for the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, if you're not familiar with that. And you'll see our template that we have for that, which is really easy for any of our customers to take and then customize and then work collaboratively with their auditors. So with that, I want to actually show you a little bit of that in the demo. So let me go over here. I have it open. I have a couple of things I want to show you. This one is on security, and then this next one that I'll be showing you is talking about the templates that I was mentioning for compliance. So I want to cover kind of both aspects of security and compliance here as examples. So this particular dashboard is a security overview of 3.0 Amazon. And what you're seeing here is there's different types of panels. All of these are panels within the dashboard that we have created this so that any of our customers can use it if they'd like to. And one of the things that you can track is you could track, like using this map application, using Mapbox, where you can actually track all of your sign-on logins. And here we're looking at a migration from single sign-on and non-single sign-on locations. And we're tracking them over time, and you can actually, zoom in on certain things with this algorithm and see more of the details breakdown. So that's one of the things you can do from a security standpoint, is just have nice visuals that will alert you with like the red indicators that maybe something's a little high, and maybe it'll help you, tracking that information. And then threat intel. If you're not familiar, our tool has CrowdStrike embedded in it, so you can actually look up malicious IPs. So in this case, what we're doing here is we're sending to this CrowdStrike lookup table an IP address, and it's returning back any that are considered a high malicious confidence. So in this case, we're seeing how many that we might have going on our system for the last 60 minutes that have occurred. You can also look at suspicious login distances. So if some of you are familiar with land speed algorithms, and we're actually going to be doing a lab with all three of these actually types of detection. So suspicious login distance, this is when it's unreal for, borderline unreal for somebody like Damon here to have traveled, logged in at this IP address, happened to be in the US, and then traveled and logged in Egypt at this IP address. Now, maybe that's actually real travel by Damon, But if it's subject to a land speed suspicious long a distance, then you'll be able to monitor it here. Other types of things that you can look at is data infiltration and exfiltration on your network traffic. So here we're looking at the volume just sent in by all the hosts here that are being tracked. You can also look at your Amazon guard duty information and be able to monitor any EC2 instances and be able to quickly click down into those and be able to isolate some aspect that you need to investigate that guard duty alerts you to. You can also look at your VPC flow from an outlier perspective. And the outlier is basically right here. Whenever you see the pink triangle, and I'll make this a little bigger here so you can see better. Whenever you see the little pink triangles, that means that an outlier occurred. And so here's your actual data. And then this is the cloud, the statistical deviation that we have requested for this. So this is a nice way for you to be able to look at any anomalies happening in your VPC flow. You can also look at firewall traffic. And with this one, I also like to show that, here we're looking at our bytes coming in and our bytes being sent out. So I can toggle one of these off. Like maybe I'm more interested in the bytes that are going out of the system, right? So maybe I want to toggle off that and then be able to just look at this piece of data. So you can do that real quick in our legends if you'd like to. And on any of these, if you want to change the time, you can do so. Like if I want to zero in on a tighter time, I could just change it to the last 15 minutes. Or if I want to track over the last 24 hours and look at a larger amount of data come in, and I can also adjust it by just changing that. And then down here at the bottom, this is being able to track file integrity and malware. So here we're looking at our system, whether or not there's something that we need to be doing to secure it and what's under quarantine that we can further investigate if we want to drill down into that. And then over here, it's looking at the integrity monitoring of the event history, so we can actually get indication of whether or not there was some changes that happened where it's a higher level that we need to go in and track. So a lot of different ways that you can look at your security data is what we're showing here. If I show you the compliance now, there's a couple of things to show you. First off, I should probably just go to our Sumo Logic app catalog real quick and show you that we have this section on compliance and security. And here in a moment, you'll be logging into the training environment. We'll be using the same technique as last night. So for those of you that were yesterday, I should say, my evening, but your day. So just keep that in mind. If you want to use the same number, you sure can for logging in here in a minute. But compliance and security, you can see that we have a lot of apps that you can just download really easily. We did this in the training yesterday. So like, let's say I wanted to have Amazon CloudTrail data or Amazon Guard Duty data or Aqua Security. I can just come here and click on them and then add them to the library by just pointing to the data source and then clicking Add to Library. So within a couple minutes, this will be up and running to your data source, and then you'll be able to use all these dashboards that exist in this particular app. So that's kind of our out-of-the-box apps that you can use for security and compliance and where they're located. Then one of the other strategic things is when I was talking about people tracking for compliance auditors and being able to report, for tracking all the different aspects, this is one for CMMC compliance, and this is the master dashboard that we have. There's a whole bunch of other dashboards in this template that you can use. So if I kind of scroll down, you can see all the different ones. There's a whole bunch that are applied as subcomponents of this. So this is just the master one that we call the master dashboard. And so what this is showing you is that framework. So here you have all the standards that apply to access control and all the standards that apply to access management and configuration management and incident response. And so what people are doing is they're actually building the links underneath this so that they take our template as a starting point because it offers the full framework, and then they're building their dashboards. And then if you're not familiar, our tool you can actually share with your partners or even anybody outside of your organization if you want to share your dashboards. So you can whitelist and that sort of thing and protect yourself from anybody else hacking in, but you can actually share them. So what a lot of our customers are looking at is the next generation of auditing is to collaborate with the auditors, and this way they can communicate through this vehicle. It's been kind of a cool thing that people have taken our dashboards and we've created these templates as a starting point, and then our customers can use those for their compliance needs. So hopefully that gives you an idea. That's basically what I wanted to show with the demo on security and compliance. So what I'd like to do next is let's go back here and get you guys logged into the environment. And I'll show you where you can access these slides once we get into the environment, so you have access to all this information. All right. So to log into our system, it's really simple. All you need to do is copy and paste these into a browser tab. And let me put these into the chat. Oh, my apologies. I see maybe a couple people had some questions or something in the chat. Oh, yeah, I'll show you where you can get the recordings. We'll be looking at that here in a minute. Will Sumo Logic share the training recording to participants? Yes. So this particular recording is not going to be shared exactly, but we have recordings that can be shared. Actually, we'll probably share this recording now that I think about it, because we haven't created one for this course because it's still pretty new. But yeah, we can give you a recording of the fundamentals. I'll show you where you can go get that here in just a minute. Now, if you're new, try to choose a number between 351 and 450. But if you, whatever number you had yesterday, as long as it's between 1 and 750, you should be okay for today's training. We just try to sometimes segment them just in case more of us were doing trainings at the same time. But I don't think anybody else is doing a training tonight on our time here or this afternoon for you guys. So I think you, as long as you use a number between 1, so 001, and 759, I think you're okay. All right, so let me demonstrate what to do. Now, what I like to do is I like to protect the way I normally log into Sumo, because at the end of this training, you'll have the chance to get certified if you'd like to. And if you want to get certified, then of course you want to be logged into your account to get the certification that appears in your name. You do not want to take it in this training environment. So in order to use the training environment, I like to encourage you to use an incognito tab. So if you're not familiar, just go over here in your Chrome window or whatever browser you're using. You can usually just open up a new incognito window. And I would do the training completely from the incognito window. And that way it protects the way that you might use your single sign-on or whatever browser you use, because you can only have one instance of Sumo in a browser. So I just wanted to help you with that. So let me demo this. First thing is I'm going to copy from the chat window. I can just highlight it and right mouse click, and then I can have service.sumologic.com, and it'll take me right to the login. Then I want to take that training plus user. And you guys are so fast. I'm going to go ahead and start the poll, and that way you can let me know if you've already gotten logged into the environment, and that way I can just facilitate anybody that might be having issues. All right. So now I'm copying that email from the chat window, which is trainingplususer@sumologic.com. Just copy that and paste that into the email here. Oops. Paste. There we go. Oh, it was missing the M. Add that. Now here, I just want to choose any 3 digits that somebody else hasn't already put in the chat. So like I'm seeing no James Bond tonight. Where's that person? Yesterday we had James Bond 007. But whatever you want to put in there, I'll just put in 112. Nobody, I don't think, has used that one. I'm not going to use this one. So if that is a favorite number for you, don't worry about it. I won't be using it. Then the password, and we change this monthly, the Sumo Rocks 20 exclamation mark. We change it toward the beginning of every month. So just giving you a heads up, but you can use this training environment anytime you want to. So there's the capital S, lowercase UMO, capital R, lowercase OCKS, and then 20 exclamation. So once you've put in the email and the Sumo Rocks 20, then just click on sign in, and it should take you right into that particular UI for our training environment. So now you have access to all of our training stuff in here. Okay. And this is where we're going to, what we're going to be using as the user interface for the training. So everybody should have a training user login set up. Let me know if anybody needs me to repeat the instructions. And like I said, if you ever need to speak up, I am allowing everybody to talk. So I'm making sure that I take care of a few other people that have joined after I did it before. You can ask questions in the Q&A. I'll try to see them in the chat. I noticed a couple of you put a couple things in the chat. I'm just looking back to see if I missed anything else real quick. But it's easier for me to monitor the Q&A window. All right. All right, so far I'm not seeing anybody saying that they need help. So hopefully it was pretty easy to follow how to do that. Now, one of the things is this is our only certification that you actually are going to walk away with a starter SOC dashboard. So I highly encourage you to do the labs, because if you don't do the labs, there is no starter SOC dashboard that will be available to you just generically. So you have to go through and actually do the labs in order to walk away with that. So hearing that, anybody need me to say the instructions one more time for logging in? Let me know. Okay. So like I was pointing out, if we go here now to the training environment, the app catalog down here, if you just click on that, we don't have a lab tonight where we're going to be installing anything from the app catalog, but this is where I went to compliance and security. So if there's something in particular you want to go and be checking out tonight or log back in later at your convenience, you can see there's a lot of different things in here. I did develop a lab for PCI compliance. So if somebody really wants to do that one beyond this course, let me know. I do have some additional labs that we're trying to build a secondary course because I created so many labs that they didn't fit into the course for a 2-hour session. So there's even more stuff if anybody needs more labs after what we do tonight. Just let me know and I'll give you a pointer to them so that you can play around a little bit further with other things. The CMCC compliance should have been shared with everybody. So you should be able to see that in your personal folder. So go down and you look for CMCC. That's what I was showing you back in the demo environment. So this is the master copy, just kind of showing you that. So if anybody was interested in that, you can see that you could export this if you're interested. Once I go through that in a lab, you'll know how to export easily. All right, so I just wanted to show those couple of things. And now let's go ahead and show you where you get to the slides and also the training labs. So if you click on the little house up here, and then you see that you have home, learn, and certification, click on the learn tab. And the learn tab, then this is where you can access a whole bunch of different things in our learning environment, but where you're gonna go today is the community with the 3 heads here, community in the bottom right, click on that. Now another window should open up, a browser tab, and you'll be seeing our community blogging area that any user of our system has access to this. You can either type the keyword labs or the keyword slides, either one of those. So I typed in labs right up here. And then this top link is the link that you want to go to get to the labs, webinars, and slides. So this is where we have past recordings. So like somebody was saying they wanted the fundamentals recording. This wasn't exactly the course I did last night, but it is the course. It just was from a previous recording. So you have all the different recordings out here. The only one we're missing is the one for this class, to be honest. So maybe I'll work with my groups so we can get maybe one of mine posted out here so you could have access to that. But no worries, just I'll make sure I'll talk with our staff to make sure that people all get a link, an email link of this recording, okay? All right, so we are going to slide down then to security and compliance. So that's just right down here. And we're gonna click on both of these. each one will open up a new tab. So this is where all the hands-on labs are that we're going to be doing today. These 9 labs right here, labs 1 through 9. And if you go back and click on the slides, that gives you access to the slides that I was sharing with you. So here's our compliance slides that you have in a LinkedIn slide share. You can download them if you have a LinkedIn account. You can also view any of our other course slides. So if you want to go back and even look at any of these. So what might be a helpful link is to actually, if I copy this and paste this into the chat, just in case you want to come back to this at a later time, you might want to keep that. So let me do that. I'll just put slides, labs, recordings, and paste in that link. So you might want to hold on to that for some later look. All right, so now what we're going to do is start going through the labs. Is there any question from anybody? Let me just check. No, I don't see anything. Oh, 007, I see that there. You are here tonight, today. Sorry, I'm going to probably say that a few times. I messed up a lot yesterday. It's kind of hard for me to remember. Maybe if I were physically there, I would keep it straight, right? All right. Okay, so what we're going to do is I slid over the hands-on labs because we're going to be sliding between these two quite a bit. And that just gives you the least amount of wrist movement, especially if you pin your Sumo logic for your training environment. All right, so what we're going to start with then, I'll go ahead and get rid of these guys. You can use those 3 more icons or 3 vertical dots, and you can close them any of the open tabs, and that's just kind of a quick cleanup. Something else just to point out is you can also toggle. You'll see me not, using this display more often because when we're building queries, you don't really need to come over here and click on a lot of stuff. So you'll just see me, collapsing this quite a bit today. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to click on those hands-on labs, and let's go and look at the very first one. This is kind of an overview, just talks about some of the stuff that I already shared with you. You can see right here that here's all the labs. You can either click on them over here, or as you slide down, we also have a reference down here. So just whichever way you want to get to lab 1, which is monitoring user activity. All right, and now as promised, these first 5 labs are going to be basically building a starter SOC dashboard that will actually cover in lab 7 how to export that and then import it into your own corporate environment if you'd like to use it. And remember, you can take it as a starting point and modify it and customize it to whatever suits your environment better. All right, so monitoring user activity. So the way these labs are designed is they have a little blurb here kind of giving you the use case, kind of drop story. So basically, just giving you some background, on monitoring user activity. Most people kind of understand that that's important today is to track that for not just compliance reasons, but also for security reasons, right? So in this lab, you're going to create a query that will show the top 10 Amazon activity with their user information. And you're also going to be playing around with a lot of components with basic parsing with JSON and how to make a visual chart. And these visual charts then will become part of that starter SOC Security Operations Center or SOC dashboard, okay? All right, so down here is the actual lab. So this first thing is we're going to be using CloudTrail log data. So you can see here that our metadata for sending data underscore source category is pointing to your lab's AWS CloudTrail data. Now, CloudTrail data is in JSON format. So that's the structured log format that I would say is prevailing more in a lot of the log formats out there these days. I think it's probably higher than the last time I attended something where they were talking, at least it's at 30% of our customer bases has JSON format. So it's growing. I believe it's probably even higher at this point. That was a while ago when I heard that. But the log contains information about requests from all the resources in your account, such as who's made the request, the services used, any actions. And what we're going to do with it is we're going to search those AWS CloudTrail logs to extract user, event, IP addresses, and all of that. When we extract it is metadata, right? So it's data about data, right? Because we've tagged it, and we're using parse JSON. We did that specifically because, you know, when you're using CloudTrail logs that are JSON format, you want to parse them with the JSON technique, because you'll see in a moment how easy that is. Yesterday, we parsed with parse anchor and parse regex, if you don't recall, just as a little reminder. So now you're learning another way to parse, which is with JSON. Now, it goes on to say that we're going to parse using the last 24 hours. So almost all of these 5 panels that we're going to create in the next, you know, a few labs are all going to use this last 24 hours, because typically when you're looking at security events, you need to track them for a period of time to really get the picture, right? So we're going to do this with some quantity of time to, it's more realistic, right, of what you would be doing anyways. So the last 24 hours, and then we're going to click start, or remember, you can always just press return or enter. So what we're going to do is just copy in this first part, we're just going to copy these. So all, just highlight them and right mouse click to copy them. Go back to your Sumo UI, and then do you see where the plus new is at the top up here? Click on plus new and log search. Now you're in the query builder up here at the top when you click in here, and you can just right mouse click and paste everything that you copied from that lab. So we have all of that. Next thing you'll want to do is you'll want to change the last 15 minutes to the last 24 hours. So remember, you just click on it, and then you'll have your relative, and you can come down and choose last 24 hours. Now let's go ahead and run it, and we'll talk through these JSONs as we run it. So remember, you can either come over here and click the start button, right? Or you can just press enter or return on your keyboard, and that does the same thing as running it, okay? So either way. Now you always get the histogram at the top, but if you don't want to see the histogram, sometimes it's helpful. Oftentimes you'll see me hiding it because it's not as useful for what I'm doing, but it's kind of nice. You can see that you're getting data, right? Just in case something is wrong in the system. But here, what we're doing is we're pointing to our lab's CloudTrail data. Now, where is that located? I'm doing a little backtracking to yesterday, and especially somebody who's brand new tonight. Where could we find the source category? Do you guys remember? You click back here on Sumo, you go down to manage data, and then collection. Okay, and then you should be on the collection tab. This is where all those source categories are found. It's actually this 5th column over. You can see source category over here. And we can actually go and find, like I can type AWS in here and just let it run on that. And it'll bring up all of anything that has AWS in it. So I can actually see these are once again the collectors, and anything below the expanded collector name right here that you can click on or collapse, those are all the sources. Then over here are the source categories in the 5th column over. So I just wanted to point that out. I won't spend too much time on this because we talked about it in yesterday's class. If you can also take admin if you want to even learn more than we talked about yesterday. So that's where you go and you find the data that you need to point to, so that if you don't know the path, you can go find them there. And then these next lines, what we're doing is we're doing a JSON parse, and it's saying field equals underscore raw. And remember, when you see these underscore values, that means Sumo generated it as part of this, as part of our built-in operators or built-in data. So whenever you see the underscores, and we'll be seeing more of those, and I'll hit home on it a little bit more as we go through. So let me go ahead and collapse that again so you can see big screen. Let me hide this histogram. And when we come over here, let's go and look at what we're actually doing. So remember, this is the field browser, and then these are the fields. So whatever you're asking it to parse, it will add those. You always get time and message. So if we commented out these 3 JSONs, you would always see time and message You possibly recall that from yesterday. But then these three were added because we parsed them. So we parsed out the actor right here, which we're showing right here. And then we see that whatever we click on over here and enable is also shown over here in the fields. So this is the raw field data. So when we say JSON field equals raw, we're pointing to this part of our data, okay? So the JSON data is shown here. This is in JSON format, and you can show it as raw by toggling it between view as JSON or view as raw. Now, if it's JSON, it will by default show as JSON, and then you'll have the option to toggle to raw. The other thing you can do is you can also hit on these little expanders here, and you can actually drill down into any of these nested levels of JSON. If you want to see all of it unveiled quickly, just use this expand JSON. Do you see where I'm at over on the far right middle? Expand JSON, click on that for a moment, and you'll see the nesting unfold. So that could be kind of useful depending on what you're trying to do. So what these do is field equals raw means it comes over here, and it's going to look for user identity.username. So if I come here, user identity, and then the dot, and then username right there. And so it should have extracted Goshia, which it did for the actor. We see the Goshia right there. And then the event type was the next one that it extracted. So if I go to event type, which is just scrolling down a little bit, right here is event type. So it's extracted that AWS API call as the event type. And if I scroll back up, you'll see that right there. And then the last thing is a source IP. So it went and extracted the source IP from this. If I get rid of this expander, might make it easier to see. There's our source IP address, and there it put that. So remember, parsing, what you're doing there is you're creating custom metadata tags. So now I have actors parsed out of all my incoming logs. I have event type parsed out and source IP parsed out. And we can scroll down and you can just kind of see that with these other ones. Like here I have Mike, AWS API call, and that source IP for that actor. So that's basically how simple it is to parse JSON, okay? Now, another technique is what we're gonna do with line 2 here. So what if you want to parse something interactively using JSON? So what you can do is you can come in here and highlight that key, the metadata tag actually that you want, and then you can say parse its selected key right here with a right mouse click. So let's go and show you that. We're going to parse this line out by using an interface in the UI. So you can do it this way, or you can do it this way is what we're going to be showing. So just a different approach. So in order to parse this, I do need to create a space for it. So I'm going to do Shift Enter, make sure I have a new line. That Shift Enter is a soft return, and that creates a new line because by default we collapse this. And so that maximizes your view of everything. All right, so now the one that I wanted to get, I have to go back and look, is event name. Okay, so let's go get event name. So right here is event name. So I just toggle on, hover on top of that, and it doesn't matter which event name. Like I could do this one down here. It doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be the first one, the first log message. It's just we're grabbing the field, right? We're using the field to parse it. So if I can come down here and then right mouse click, then do you see where it says parse selected key? Click on that. And now it pasted it in there. So now I have my JSON field, the same format as these other ones. The only thing I'm missing, right, is the assignment. Remember, you always need to assign it as some kind of tag. So here we're going to assign it as, and I think we're just using event name. Let me go back and look. Yeah, just event underscore name. So I'm going to just type as event underscore name. All right. Now, if I run that, I can run that one also, and then you'll see that it's basically put that in as event name here. And that's just showing you an interactive way to do it in the UI for parsing, just so you see some of the different techniques. Also, something just to mention is if you do just hover over anything and right mouse click, you can see you have a Boolean functionality here. We also have launch and service now integrated into ours. You can also just copy things. So just quick copies, clipboard copies for you. All right, so now continuing on. Didn't talk about this, but just highlighting that if you want to, you could parse everything out of that by using the JSON auto. That's our quick and dirty way to just parse every single thing in your JSON structured log messages coming in using the JSON auto. And sometimes that's helpful. Then you just have everything to your access. But we just kind of selected which ones we wanted. All right, so now we got our first 5 lines of code. It wants us to create a soft return at the bottom so that we can paste in this. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab in step 5, this filter. Remember, a where is a filter. So if you grab this in step 5, we're gonna now do some filtering. So we finished our parsing, hold down the shift, press enter, and paste in that where. So what are we going to filter on here is we're going to filter on any event type that matches event type. Okay, so we're going to, and the reason why we're doing this is because we're going to actually create it as a parameter. So now that I've put that in, we're going to go and actually parameterize this. There's this little kind of in the bottom right of this query builder, there's this create a parameter. And so what you do is highlight this event underscore type, and we're going to parameterize it. Now, why are we doing this? Because we want to create lookup tables. We want to be able to pivot in our dashboard. So we want to filter and pivot, basically. All right, so let's go ahead and highlight that and create the parameter. So if you come back here and highlight event type, all right, and then do you see right here it says create a parameter? It's kind of in a blue link. Look, click on that, and now a pop-up will appear. It also, notice it put the double curly brackets around it and called it parameter 1. All right, so now we want to fill out the manage parameter settings for this. All right, so when we go back to the lab, it gives us everything that we need. We want to call it event type. We want it to keep it as a string, and then we just need to save it. Okay, we don't need to do anything else to creating this parameter for right now. Later on, we will come back in and do some further modifications to this, but for right now, we'll just create that. So I'm going to come back here. I want to call it just event type, so it's not confusing. Just might as well call it event type. And then its default value will be event type, which is fine. We'll leave it as a string. And you can put in a description here, like later on when you come back to explain, you know, what you were doing. And then just go ahead and save this. So just click on save. So I've put in event type for default, string. You can type in some short description of, you know, what was the intent behind this if you'd like to record that, and then just click save. Now you can see that another window called parameters appears to the right of that on your screen. And also notice now it's highlighted and it has the double curly brackets around it. All right. So that defines a parameter. And now we can play around with this a little bit, but we're going to create another parameter. So now that we've created it that way, just like before with the JSON, I'm going to show you a different way to create it. So if you want, you can just actually use these double curly brackets. So that's what we're going to do here in step 9. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually do another filter on actor matching actor. Okay. And then we're going to do an aggregation of a count for all those actor event types and event names. So we're going to count them up. And then this top 10 gives us our top 10 actors by the event type and the count, and you'll see that. And then last, we're going to use that transpose command. Now, we used that in fundamentals yesterday. Do you remember what it did? It just allows you to dictate in the format what appears on the rows and what appears on the columns. All right, so just grab all that, and we're going to copy it, and we're going to paste that at the end of our query. So if I go here to the end of the query and hold down the shift, enter to create a new line space, then I can paste in all those lines once I've created at least a new line space. Now, didn't talk about this, but now we're doing queries right out of the chute that are a lot longer than what we did yesterday. in fundamentals. So what you're seeing here is best practice of keeping your pipes lined up. Now, some of you are probably have a strong background in this, and that might be the obvious way you like to code. You don't have to do it like that. It's just for us, we like to teach it this way because we think it just keeps it a little bit more organized so that it's easier to follow the code of what's going on. All right. So now let's talk about this one. We have just added these 4 lines, and I briefly kind of went over them, but let's run it. Now, in order to run it, if I try to run it right now, let me just show this. It's going to give you this error here saying this field is required. What you need to do is you need to basically fill both of these with a wildcard. Later on, we're going to come back and play with them and actually have some different values. But for right now, I'm just going to put a wildcard in there for both of them. Then I can run it. So when I click start, then to run it or press enter or return, now it will run just fine. Okay, because it's basically now not looking for, this was not even filled in, but it's not looking for something in particular, it's looking for anything, right? So any event type or any actor is what we're basically saying here for these parameters. So let's look and see what happened here. We did these 2 filters, right? But we're making them wildcards. So basically right now they're not really filtering, right? They're just wildcards. So they're bringing in anything. And then we have this count by actor, event type, and event name. So that's what we're seeing here in the aggregate tab. So remember, the aggregate tab gets created whenever you do an aggregate command, such as count. And you remember how to go and get the cheat sheet? Let's remind people how to do that real quick, because somebody might find that helpful today. So if you click back on your Sumo logic and you go to help, and you go back into your community. So help community. And then here, if you would just type, oh, excuse me, I didn't go in it the right way. There's a better way to go into this. Sorry about that. Let's get out of help. I'll show it to the little house up here. If you click on the Learn tab, and then you see where it says cheat sheet right here. So just clicking on the little house and the Learn tab, and then cheat sheet. And this is our online reference for any quick command. So here's parsing all grouped together, all the different parsing commands, like we just did JSON. And here's aggregation, all grouped together. So some of you might want to access that. We also have this PDF version if you want to click on that. So I just wanted to show that to people, and I will quickly copy and paste that into the chat window also. Oh, somebody already did. Wow. I got a helper tonight. You guys are awesome. Wow, really appreciate that. All right, so now that you've seen that, let's go back and just talk through this query a little bit more. If I can get myself back in there. So now what we did is we didn't really filter on anything, but we set up the capability to filter. Does that make sense? So later on, we can come in here and we can put different values in here, all right, and filter on those. Now the count is what then created this aggregate tab. So before that, all I had was what's all here, all the messages with all the parsing that we're seeing that happen. So if I click back on the aggregate tab, now you can see that it counted by the actors and the event type and the event name. So you can see all of those listed there. Then we asked it to only give us the top 10. Now in our case, we didn't have 10. So, you know, it gave us up to what it could. So, but we're getting 7 users here, 7 different actors. And then we can transpose that so that we actually can dictate that we want to see the actors in the rows. And then going across, we want to see the event types. So now it's listing those 2 event types. So obviously, if we wanted to pivot on this, we could actually go up here and type like AWS, API, CALL. And then it would only, if I ran it again, it would only show me those. Oh, I probably have one too many. Epicall. Oh, I did some kind of typo. Let me go back, put the asterisk back in. I just didn't get it right. I misspelled it. AWS API CALL. Okay. So AWS API CALL. So now it'll just screen out on that event type. So that's what parameters can do, allow you to do that. Now, obviously, we want to finesse this a little bit more because you don't want to have to type this all the time, right? So what we're going to do next in this lab is we're going to play around with that. After, I guess, we do the visual. So I'm going to do the visual first, and then down here, you'll see that we'll get to playing around with customizing that parameter and setting it up so that it's set up as a lookup. All right, so one more thing we want to do before then is we just want to play around with the visual. So I want to get you familiar with where you go to create these visuals. So that's the first thing. We're just going to go in here and make our bar chart from this table. So I'm going to go back and make this so that you can see both of them. All right, so I'm going to just have both the event types in here. And then I'm going to go back to the chart. And now you can see the chart in some blue and then the lighter blue, but I want to make it look more like exceptions, right? Because I'm filtering out on these top 10 using that top 10 command right here. So these are more the exceptions. So if I go into my settings icon, and depending on which visual you chose, you'll have different properties here. So like I can go into this one and just change the color by clicking on change properties. And then I'm just going to make it red so that it is more noticeable as maybe indicating a problem, right? That these are values for these actors, for these event types that I want to highlight in red. So just showing you how you can customize the chart a little bit. Then the next thing I want to do is, if I go back to the lab, is I want to actually customize that parameter now and make it a lookup table. Because you notice I had to go in there and actually physically type, you know, and we don't want to make everything so manual, right? So what you can do is you can actually click on these three, the more icons here, the three vertical dots, and we're going to just change this event type for now. In another lab, we'll go and we'll fix up the actor later on. But for right now, we're just going to create a lookup table for the, just use a lookup table for the event type. So I'm going to go ahead and you'll see that when I click on that, I should see this pop-up appear, and I'm going to choose Manage Parameter Settings. All right, so Manage Parameter Settings, and then I'll come back and we'll fill out the parameter settings for that so that we can use it as a lookup. So I'm back over here in my lab in the UI, and I want to go to the event type and click on the mores here. And do you see where it has Manage Parameter? You can also delete the parameter if you want to clean it up. But I'm going to click on Manage the Parameter. And now what it has here is all the settings. And we looked at this before, but this time I want to do something a little bit different. So what I want to do is I want to actually create this so that it is a lookup. So I'm going to use this expander just below the description here, and I'm going to change it to a lookup. I already have in our system set up this lookup result. So I can just point right to shared event types and type that in. And then we want to fill out these last two fields as event type and none, okay? So if we go back there, if I click on the expander where it says set values for parameter, and then right here it says none, I just click on that and I want to choose. Now there's other possibilities, but I want to use the lookup table. So I'm going to, which is commonly what a lot of our customers like to do, is the lookup table. And then select a field for values. The value that I want to use is, of course, the only thing that I have, which is the event type. So let me go ahead and, that's the path, shared event types. So I'm going to type in that path. So slash, oops, did I get that right? Sorry, slash shared, and then event. And it probably will pop up. Our look ahead is working for me. So I get this, and I can just click on that now for slash shared event types. Now, of course, this was already pre-built in the system, but we will be doing in another lab. I'll show you how to create these. Okay, so don't worry about that. But for right now, you're just going to use the one that's already there. And then you only have one option here. When you click on the drop down, just choose the event type, because that's all we have set up in this field. And then here you want to put none. Okay, so we're not using any of the optional fields for key labels in that. So then after I've entered this, so I have lookup slash shared value slash event underscore types, and then I've chosen event type and none, then I click save. And now what it's going to do after just a couple minutes it will actually create that lookup. So now when I come up here to this parameter and I delete that wildcard, now I have the lookups because I've defined the lookups in the system. So now I could pivot on either of these and filter. So now if I just wanted to go and look at all my, right now I'm seeing both. So if you, before you change it, if you come down here, you're seeing both for each of the actors, okay? Unless they don't have both, like J Schmo does not have it, for example. But if I pivot on one of these, and you can just choose whichever one you want, and then rerun it by either clicking the start or pressing enter return on your keyboard. Now you'll see that now I'm just getting those event types. So this is just a way that you can set up your filters really easily for your system. And we're going to be playing around with those at a higher level down the road too. All right, so now the last thing is we want to create the starter SOC dashboard because you actually get a takeaway by doing all these labs. So with this one, all we need to do is, do you remember we clicked add to dashboard just in the upper right? And so when you say add to dashboard, then you just have to name it. Now, I highly encourage you to actually use these names. It'll be easier. You can customize them later on down the road. If you don't like these names, that's fine. But for the purpose of maybe needing to answer some exam questions, you probably want to keep them just as the names as they appear here. So what I'll do is I'll grab this by highlighting it and then just copy it in line 16 here. And then I'm going to go back to the UI and do the add to dashboard, and then I'll come back here and grab more stuff from it so that I just follow the instructions in step 16. All right, so I come back here and I'm going to add to dashboard. Do you see where I'm in the middle of my screen here? Oh, and by the way, this is just a little warning. It's nothing that you have to worry about. It's just telling us that we have multiple fields named that, which is fine. All right, so when I click on add to dashboard, then it's going to ask me the panel name. So I'm going to go ahead and paste what I copied, which was add panel. Oh, what am I saying? I copied the wrong thing. Excuse me. For the panel title, I want top 10 user activity. Getting ahead of myself. Sorry about that. Wasting your time. All right, let's get that panel name. And it's just, it might be helpful, like I said, if you just use the panel names exactly how we have them in the system. Now for the dashboard name, this is where you customize it to using SOC underscore and then your initials and 3 random numbers just to keep yours unique for you. So I'm just grabbing that part just so I remember it, and I'll paste that in. And now I'll just put my initials, Jazz, and then I'll create one. I'll just use that 112. I don't think anybody else used that number. And it doesn't matter because I'm in a different environment. Even if you use 112, it doesn't matter. So we've named the panel, we've named the dashboard. Now we select that, create that new dashboard by clicking on it. All right. Oh, for some reason it didn't get mine. Let me type mine again. Sorry. There we go. All right. And now I can just add it. It's going to put it in my personal folder, but we talked yesterday about how you can customize all that depending on what you want to do, but personal folder is just fine. Remember, your personal folder is this icon right up here. You have your recents, you have favorites, your personal folder, which is set up for your working space. So if I click on that, I should be able to then go find this SOC Jazz 1112 just by maybe even putting in 1112. I probably don't have too much, and there's this dashboard right there that I also have on my screen. Now I saved it with that display. I probably wanted to actually go put this back as an asterisk so that I can actually filter. So I'm going to go back and change mine and then go back and add it to the dashboard real quick. So I'll paste that in and I'll call it my, I guess it's not essential, but you know, I just kind of feel like I should update that one real quick because I should have put an asterisk back in there. So let me actually delete this one. It's okay. I'll come back and add it. So I'm just going to delete that so I can just name it the same thing. If you need to do the same thing, putting the 2 asterisks there, feel free to do that. You can go back and grab the name. It was top 10 user activity, and then the SOC with the dashboard name. Okay, grab that, and then SOC underscore jazz 112. All right, and then I could just click add again. That way I have it with the filters with the wildcards in it, because I like it to appear that way in my system. All right. So now if I go back down here, we are really done with lab 1. There are a few quiz questions, so let's look at these real quick. We'll do these quiz questions as time allows, because they will build your confidence for taking the exam at the end. So JSON field equals raw, double quote, source IP address as assigned, which is what as does, as source IP. That extracts the source IP address and all its subsequent values as appearing in the incoming logs. Is that true or false? And if somebody is brave, let's see you respond in the chat. Do you think that number 1 is true or false? Is that what it does? Yes, that's true. Very good. Somebody was brave. All right, so basically just trying to get you to remember how to do the JSON structure. Okay, so just remember this part is pulling it out of the raw fields that appear to the right of the field browser in the JSON format, and then you're assigning it. Okay, double curly brackets enclosing a variable label are used to create parameters. Is that true or false? Double curly brackets enclosing a variable label. Is that how we did it? Yes. Very good, true. And then 3, I use the settings icon in the message tab to change the color of the bar graph. And I warn you, this one's a little tricky. I use the settings icon in the message tab, and I'm highlighting that. Let me just go back and talk through this. So if I go back here, here is the message tab. When you're in the message tab, this is not any aggregation of data. That only appears in the aggregate tab. So the settings icon way over here only appears when you're in the aggregate tab. And sometimes people need that highlighted. So that's the point of that true and false question. All right. Now let's go on to lab 2. And I'm just looking at the time. I think we could also try to take a little short break too, and then come back and work more on the labs. But I'm thinking with this one, I can probably get you through it. Where's my beautiful pictures? I'm not seeing them. All right, well, I can still do it without them. Maybe they're just taking a while to load. Let me try. Oh yeah, it's still loading. All right. I can still do it without the pictures. After we do this lab, we'll take a little 5-minute break. So what we're going to do in this one is geolocation of console login. So basically being able to see across the world or whatever your reach is, right? To see where all those users are logging in, we have this function called geo lookup. And we're going to be actually using 2 different lookups in these labs today. You're going to be using this one for the mapping functionality. And then at the very last lab, you'll be using CrowdStrike for malicious IPs. So basically what we can do is we can detect potential login threats. So we're going to look once again at our AWS CloudTrail table and then look for console logins coming in from multiple IP addresses, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is point to that CloudTrail data, and we're doing that here. And then we're going to run it for 24 hours. And these are all very similar to what we looked at before. We're just adding this console login one as a result, if you look at the descriptions here for the parsing in JSON. So go ahead and copy that, open up a brand new query. So plus new log search at the top, paste that in. All right. And then I'm going to set that up for 24 hours. So pretty much all of these first few will be 24 hours. Make it bigger. All right, and let that run. And you'll see now under the message tab that we'll get all of those. So my Wi-Fi must have slowed down all of a sudden. Yeah, because it's still even pulling up the information here. I might be forced to take a break and just let yeah, there's a timeout, network latency. Okay, let me work on my Wi-Fi and we'll take a little 5-minute break. Let me go ahead and get that and we'll come back to this. So in this presentation mode, get that loaded up. This also talks with you while you're taking your 5-minute break. If you're not familiar with our 24/7 support, you can actually do that using the Sumo Dojo. Goodness. Okay, I'm just going to run it this way and start letting it count down. Just taking a while for it to go into present mode. There we go. Okay, now we'll let this count down. Take a 5-minute break. Hopefully my Wi-Fi will be smoothed out in those 5 minutes. If not, I'll cry. All right, it's not counting down. Darn it. All right, I will skin the cat a little bit differently. Do you guys have that phrase down there? Skin the cat? Wonder where it came from. I don't know where I got it from. That's a terrible thing to skin a cat. All right, I'm just going to go out on YouTube and grab that 5-minute break, just any one, so we can time the break for you. Everything is slow for me. Hello. All right, maybe I'm just going to have to do a wall clock while I work on my Wi-Fi here. See what I can do to speed it up again. All right, so it is 17 after. So let's just say at 22 after, and I'm going to put that in the chat. So break until 22 after the hour. And I will hope and pray that my Wi-Fi gets to running again. Yeah, okay. Okay. All right, I believe that my Wi-Fi is operating better. So hopefully I won't run into that same problem. So it all came here for me, which is great. So where we left off, and I didn't see anybody have any questions during the break, so we'll just kind of continue through. So I think the last thing I left off was just running this. So I'll go ahead and run it now. So what you can see here once again is the results that are coming back in with those particular JSON parses. And if I go back in here, now that I've created that part of it, so that I have those results parsed out for actor, event type, result, and source IP. Now what I want to do is I want to filter to create the parameters. So I need to put in those two wheres again. But in this case, it's a little bit different because I'm going to do where is empty. Okay, so I'm going to actually, so I can only do those results where actor and event type are not empty. So I'm going to basically do a test. The is empty is a test that you can do to make sure that, that it's not empty, that it's not null values in there or blanks. So if I go ahead and put those in there for that test, that's the first thing I'm going to do. And then I'm going to make space for the parameters. And so here, I'm just going to go right away to the curly brackets. But you remember that you can also create them interactively in the UI if you highlight event type and actor. But here, we'll just use them as the parameters themselves. So when I paste these in, notice as soon as I do that, I now create that parameter window over here. Now, once again, I need to put in the wildcards here before running it, because if I run it now, it's going to basically be looking for something to trigger off of that. So if I use the wildcard, then that just means anything, and I'm not filtering at this point. And it'll just pull in all values for actors. And then remember how you can see that. Here's the 7 values there that are in for the actress. If you just click on that, then you see those 7. You get up to the top 10 values. And in our case, we get 7 shown up here. Remember, you get that approximate count and you get the percentage breakdown for any of those. For the source IPs, you can see there's 407 of those. So just don't forget that you have this in the field browser available to you. All right. So now that I have the filter set up in there, I put the asterisk, the wildcard in there. Now what I want to do is I want to create the lookup for that. So the next thing is I'm going to use that lookup command. And the lookup, what it does is it actually goes to that geolocation. It takes whatever IP address you've transferred to it. So that's what we're doing here. It's best to read it backwards. With this lookup command, we're taking that IP address, source_IP that we parsed right up here, right? And we're passing that into this database lookup for the map. And then it's going to return anything we request here. And we're asking for these values. If you go and get online documentation help on the lookup, you'll see there's a whole bunch of things you could have it return. But we're just having it return that one for now. So all I need to do is add this line to it. I'm going to go ahead and grab the stuff from line 8 because all we are adding onto that is the count. So that we can aggregate, because remember, just the lookup itself won't create a visual. You must aggregate the data to create the visual. All right, so we just copy those last 2 lines in step 8, and just do them all in one swoop. Put them here at the end, hold down my shift and press enter to create a new line and paste them in. All right. All right, and mine pasted funny. I'll just go in here and create that order that I like with all the pipes lined up here on the left. All right, so now when I run this, now what we're going to see is we're going to see that it's gone and then it's accessed and returned back the latitude, the longitude, the country name for all these different source IPs that I passed into the lookup table right here. So I've gotten all those values returned back to me, and it just places them in the columns here in the aggregation because I said to count by actor, source IP, latitude, longitude, country name. So that's why I'm seeing all those in the aggregation itself. Now this last one, when I say count, remember when you use the count operator, it produces this underscore. Whenever you see the underscore in front of something, that means Sumo created it or it was built into Sumo already. So when we use this operator count, you'll always have this underscore count that's available to you, which is shown in this last column. Now to get to the pretty map, all you do is go over to the map icon, which is right here with the, looks like a little location thing for a map. Click on that, and it will now update it for that map. And why isn't mine showing up? Let me try to refresh. And while it's doing that, I'll just scroll down and get set for the next part. So I'm just refreshing so that I can see my map. All right, and then the last part of this one is we're going to do the same thing where we're going to just add this panel to the dashboard because this is going to be in our starter SOC. And we're going to call this Cloud Trail Geo of sign-in activity. So I'll copy that from step 10. Just copy that so I can just paste it into the panel. Let me go back. Did I get my dashboard? It's like it's trying to go and then it's not going. I don't know why. Let me click on maybe the expander to try to get it now. Let me try. Sometimes I have to play with mine. I didn't log in again today, and sometimes that screws up my display. But let me just try a couple things. Go back to the table and then click over on. Now, for whatever reason, mine's just not going to cooperate tonight, but that's okay. Hopefully you're seeing yours. Just for whatever reason, it's probably because I didn't log out recently. I will paste it in. And I'm going to go ahead and put it to the same SOC dashboard. So now you already have it in here. So as you're typing, it'll probably come up just like mine's coming up, and you can just click on that and it will add this panel now into that same dashboard. This is common. This is just basically saying, do you want it to be the same? And we're purposely doing this. We want them to be the same. So every panel is going to have event type and actor, because we're going to do the starter SOC dashboard will allow you to pivot on either one of these across all the panels in the dashboard. So that's just, indicating did you want to change them, but we want ours purposely to be the same. So I'm going to try one more time, see if I can get my map. I don't know what's happening with that. Maybe it'll, oh, there it came back. Okay, sorry about that. It's probably because I didn't log out. It sometimes doesn't refresh for me. Now we have these two searches that are still open. We can leave those open if you want, or you can close them if you want. You can readjust things, like you notice I just pulled my dashboard over here. So just keep in mind you can rearrange these tabs just like you can in a browser. So now I have two of my dashboard panels in here. And what's cool is with these dashboard panels is I can actually use these in my own environment later on. So you'll be able to take these, I'll show you how, and export them out of here. Now I'm going to go ahead and skip past the quiz questions, but if somebody's looking at them and they don't understand one, feel free to ask me and we can do any review on them. But just for the sake of time, I'm going to keep going on to lab 3. Now lab 3 is the number of top 10 number of failed login attempts. And so oftentimes what you might have is people trying to, log in and they're forgetting their account, right? This is probably the IT person's nightmare, right? That none of us can remember our passwords. So basically, you're going to learn how to aggregate this data over time to focus and filter specifically on this user activity. So if we scroll down here so that we can detect those who failed to log into their account, we're going to go and open up a new log search, and we're going to paste all this in. So once again, we're using CloudTrail data. For all of these, they're all going to be using the CloudTrail. So just copy everything in step 3. We've talked about what this is doing. This is basically all those same things we've been using from the first 2 labs combined in one, if you take a look at the different parsing that we're doing. So let's go ahead and get that into a brand new query. So I go up here and go plus new, log search, got my brand new query, and I can paste it in. Now, I showed this yesterday, but just some of you that might be new tonight, this is your history. So if you want to go into here, you can pull back any of the previous queries that we've been doing. So just keep in mind, we have this history here for you with this little drop down here. All right, now that I got that pasted in, I can change this for 24 hours. We're making all of these for at least 24 hours. And if you want, you can run it so you can see the parsing that's happening for all of those data, metadata tags that we're pulling out for source IP, results, and all that. So now that we have that, now what I want to do is I want to create those parameter fields. So here, I don't care about the null in this case. It won't upset anything. I just want to go right to creating the parameters. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the parameters for this, okay, and paste those in. So we're showing a little bit different kind of possibility here with this lab and how we organize it. So we're going to go ahead and put the parameters in. Remember, as soon as you put in those curly brackets around the variable, like event type and actor, then you get these over here. If you click start, it won't run because you got to put something in for these values. So I just put the wildcard in, and that allows you to then run them so that you can see the parameters running in that query. The next thing is in step 7. To only view the results where actor and event type are not empty, we want to basically filter them out like we did before. Here, we're just showing them after. So after we've created those parameters for actor and event type. So we're also going to check to make sure that we only filter on the log results that produce failures and event types that are not console logins. All right, so here we want to look at filtering out those failures and those console logins. So that's what we're doing with these 3 commands, checking on the null and also doing the filtering. All right. So now when we run this, we will only be seeing anything that has result is equal to failure. So now we're only getting those incoming log messages that will have that failure indicator under the results. So here you can see under results, here's failure. And then we're only looking at the event types because we only care about logins here. So we're just singling out those console logins. So you can see all our event types are now just going to be those AWS console logins. And then aggregating data over time. This is an important concept to understand how to do this. We've been just looking at our data over the 24-hour period, but what if you want to group that data and organize it into, in this case, we're going to look at it over the 1 hour intervals over this 24-hour period. So we want to basically group our incoming logs into 1 hour sets of data. So that's what this will do, this time slice 1 hour. And then after we have that, then we can use that underscore time slice, because this time slice that we generated now has created this built-in metadata tag called underscore time slice, which represents time for those 1 hour chunks. So we're going to basically count in each of those 1 hour chunks all of these different parameters, actor, event type, and result. So we're grouping our logs, our incoming logs, so that we can look at these chunks over time. And then the last thing is just a top actor, so like we used before. So go ahead and paste those in at the very end of this with the shift return to create the new line and paste. And when I run this, now what you'll see is that we have back under messages, you can see that we have those, all of those values that we've extracted, right? And that we're just focusing once again on the failures. Here under the aggregates, now we said to count by the time slice. So here's the time slice right here. It's shown in this as time, basically. So this time slice, it's going to count by those time slices. So here's this 7 at the 700 hour, 600 hour, and 5 o'clock hour, 4 o'clock hour. And you can see for those different events and console failures, how many came in for each one of those actors that's listed over here. So we basically counted all those in. Now, in this lab, how would you want to display this, right? I think what we want to do is we want to actually add this panel just as a table. So just leaving it as a table. So we're not going to, sometimes a table is more informative. So in this case, that's what we're going to do. So we're going to call this top 10 failed login attempts. So I'll copy that so I can paste it in. Going back to the lab itself, I just click on add to dashboard here. And then I'm going to paste that panel name in. And then the dashboard, once again, is your starter sock. And there's mine that I've been pasting in. And then I just add this top 10 failed login attempts to that. And of course, it's asking me if I need to rename them, but I want them all to be common. And so there you have it. So now we have our top 10 user activity for monitoring. We have our geo lookup of where the sign-in activity is happening and the login attempt. So all of this is monitoring that user activity, right? So now what we're going to do, if we go down to the bottom of this, is go to lab 4. And do browse these. And if something looks like you want me to come back to it, we can always come back to it at the very end, or anytime just interrupt me. See, I don't see anything in the Q&A. Don't be shy to use the Q&A if you want to be anonymous, because I know a lot of you have security in your forefront, right? So you remember, you can put an anonymous question in the Q&A. So don't hesitate to do that if you don't want, to be recognized of whatever your question is. Lab 4, account compromise. So we all are familiar with brute force, probably. This is where basically, somebody is doing a cyber attack on you, trying to, using some clever techniques of being able to keep trying to log in, trying to detect, through their different routines that they can use, automated routines, to get in and break into your system, right? So we want to be able to detect this when it's going on, this brute force. So in this one, we're going to use some new operators that we haven't done before, the conditionals and the sum operators, so that you can also see how to apply those. So it starts off similarly. We're going to open up a new log search. We're pointing to the CloudTrail data. We're parsing all these different values. So I'm going to go ahead and copy them again and paste those in. So a lot of these do start similarly, as you can see. And hopefully that's good news. So you don't have to keep reinventing things, right? You're getting the idea that there's a lot of reuse that happens. And then you just customize a portion of the query for what you want to do. To create the parameters, that's what we're doing with the where statements here. So I'll go ahead and I'll grab those. And then, of course, I want to put the asterisks in. So I'm going to go ahead and assign the asterisks after I paste these in, so that it could be anything. I'm not yet filtering. And you'll see what we're going to do with this in the lab 6. We'll be playing around with these parameters and customizing them a little bit further. All right, so now that we have all of that in with our parameters and all that, now what we want to do is go down to looking at how we're going to look at this data over time. So once again, we're going to use that time slice to group into 1 hour chunks so that we can start to look at what happened in this hour versus the next hour and so on and so forth. But we're going to use these conditionals. And they're really easy to understand. And we're also going to use this aggregation with a sum for the first time. So this last command is all about the sum. So let me go ahead and copy these, and I'll explain as we paste them in and run them, what they're actually doing. So the first part of this is grouping them into 1 hour chunks. Then what we're doing here is we're going to, and I'll go ahead and run this for 24 hours. Change the time. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the successes and failures. I'm going to click back on the message tab to show you those. So what happens is we have assigned success count, and we've also assigned a failure count that can eventually be tallied up in this next sum command. Okay, that's what we're doing here. So what we're doing is we're taking that result that we got back here of the console logins, and we want to see, did they successfully log in? And if they did, then we want to pass a 1 to the success count as a flag indicator, or we want to zero it out, right? If it didn't happen, if the result was not a success. And if the result was a failure, the opposite, right? Then we want to pass a 1 to the failure count. So we're just using these as tracking for each of the incoming log message. So each log message is that's coming in. So like, for example, this log message here is all one log message. If it's a failure, then if it has a failure for the result on the console login, which is shown right here, this one had a success, then that means it's going to put a 0 for the failure and a 1 for the success count. Okay, so that's what we're doing, is tallying it up. With this aggregation line, we have actually 2 sums happening here. So do you see the comma where I stopped? So you can actually put 2 aggregation commands together back to back on the same line with a separated by a comma. So I'm adding up all my success counts here, right, from all the incoming logs that were successful, and then I'm getting that success, right? So whether it got a 0 or 1, I would add it up to get a total success value. And then I'm adding up all my failures so that I get the total sum. So if I come back here to my aggregation, because I asked it to sum it up by time slice, actor, and event, so you can see here's the time slice, the actor, and the event, then I have my successes and my failures for each one of those. So now with this, for brute force detection, then obviously the ones that have a whole bunch of failures and then have a success. So you could actually, you want to do something further, right, to screen these out. So if we go back and look at the lab here, to detect the filters, we can filter using the where again. So we can say, to calculate, because we want this to be a little bit more accurate, a failure rate percent. So right here, this failure percent here, we're going to take the ratio of failures to successes and then compute them as a percent. So we're basically going to take this failure percent value, so I'll copy those and add this to the bottom of our query. So, you can see some comments down here you might want to pay attention to that, when somebody's just trying to, log in, then that would indicate a failure percent is over 100, right? So here we want to do this because we probably want to have an alert. We probably want to establish an alert, which we showed how to do that yesterday. So I'm going to go ahead and paste these in at the bottom and run it so we can see if we have anything going on and for the last 24 hours, which is the part that we're tracking. And so here I can see, that, I'm definitely in the low percentiles for most of the things. I mean, this one's maybe getting a little high on a lot of failures that were happening, but that's just because he hadn't, this actor had not logged in, that much. So I'm not seeing too many failures there. So luckily for us, it looks like our brute force detection algorithm here is telling us we're okay at the moment. This just looks like normal user activity. Now, the way that we want to represent this panel into the dashboard is we want to go ahead and take this and add it just like we're seeing. So we're going to just take it as a table. And so I'm going to copy the title because it might be helpful for you to have all these titles at each of your panels, just for answering some exam questions later. I come back here, I click add to dashboard over here on the right, and we just paste in that panel title. One thing good is you guys are getting a lot of practice on doing this. So by the time you get through today's training, you're going to be like, I think I know how to do this because you've certainly practiced enough on adding these panels to the dashboard. All right, and I just go ahead and push it through to the dashboard. So now I have possible brute force attempts being tracked, and I would probably also set up an alert on this one, right, using that percent. All right, so that's lab 4. So now we want to add a 5th panel to this dashboard. And this last one is pretty long. It's very impressive. This is detecting a land speed violation. So you guys know that in today's society, this was one that I demoed showing you, but this algorithm is actually more complicated than the one that I was showing you in the demo. But this is a critical factor, right, to protect the security of your corporate environment, is to make sure that, if somebody's logging in at one IP address and then all of a sudden they're logging in at an IP address that there's borderline possibility, it's almost impossible is maybe the way to put it, that they actually physically were able to get to that other IP address, which is showing up in a location that's, planes travel at what, these days over 500 miles per hour, I think. So, maybe they can't get to it. Like in this example right here, we're just showing, and we're using Australia, which is really nice for a lot of you in Australia. So for example, a user logs in from Australia and then just 3 hours later, they log in from Brazil. So we want to be able to detect those kind of things so that somebody can go in and look at them. So here we're going to be using the geo lookup capability, but we're also going to be using some other things such as backshift and conversion, IP version 4 to a number. And this gets a little bit complicated, but it's something that you can take away and go and examine a little bit further and maybe even use it for some other applications. So what this does, and is it still bringing up the query flow chart disappeared. I don't know, is that showing up for you guys too? Maybe if one person could tell me. Are you guys seeing the query flow chart, or is it just me because my system's maybe a little bit slow? Anybody let me know? Nope. Okay, I'll fix that later. There's actually a really nice flow chart. It's not essential for getting through this exercise, but I'll go back and fix that. I don't know what happened to it. But it basically goes through step by step because the idea is this is a pretty long query that we're going to be going through. So what we're doing is we're showing the flow with all the comments of what we're doing in each one of these flows. So you can see we're going to be pointing to our data, which is the first thing. Then we're going to be doing some special parsing and filtering. And then we're going to be doing some conversion. And then we're going to be doing some geo lookup, right, using the map. And then we have to calculate the distance, right? And we have to calculate the speed. And then finally, we're going to filter out some things so that we don't see those with the same IP address in it. So it's a little bit involved, but let's just go through it. I think you guys will like this as a takeaway today. It's kind of the crown jewel. What we're going to do is first we're going to point to the source category. So we're going to select our source category here as the CloudTrail data. Now these, whenever you see the 2 forward slashes, that's one of the ways you can comment. Another way that you can comment is by using, this is a multi-line type of comment. So you can also use the / asterisk and then close with an asterisk / and all of that will be commented out. So this comments out anything to the right of the line. So you can use these anywhere in it, however you'd like to do it. So I'm going to copy all that and just copy the comment too, and I'll paste it into a brand new query. And now this is separating it so that you guys can see everything step by step what we're doing. So you can see here, we're pointing to the CloudTrail data. We've done this before. We're using JSON to parse out a user, an IP, and then we're using the no drop. Now the no drop we haven't talked about yet. The no drop, and you can go and right now click on this guy here if you want to open this in a new tab and actually get the explanation for no drop. But basically what a no drop does is it allows you to retain all of the incoming logs, even if they don't match whatever you're trying to parse here. So basically it's a best practice to use the no drop because you're retaining any incoming log messages so that you don't overlook something. Until maybe you're more familiar with your data or something like that, you're comfortable with what's coming in. But even then, you probably just want to use the no drop. It's just a best practice. So the no drop is added there at the end. And then the next thing is we want to filter because we want to create this parameter for actor. So for it to execute properly, we also want to make sure that we're using an IP address and so we're doing the is public IP address check. So we have this test that you can actually use on that IP address. So it's only going to filter out those that are public. And then we're going to use the minimum command to actually take all of our message times and calculate the minimum here because we need to be able to sort out what time they logged in publicly. And we need to be able to track that login time for each of these users. So we're going to basically sort those out by each of the users' logins. So I'll go ahead and I'll grab all that and I'll copy it and I'll paste that into the query. Oops. Is it just slow? There we go. And we're going to do this also for 24 hours. So I'll go ahead and do that. And my actor will need to have an asterisk in it that has the parameter with the curly brackets here for actor. All right, so now you can see that we have those IP addresses, we have those login times, okay? So these login times pulled out in seconds, basically, all right? So now if we keep going down to this, now the next thing is to look for those non-existent previous IPs because we don't want to, if there's not a matching pair to open and close it, then we need to get rid of those and filter those out. So we're going to convert those IP addresses also to a number. So that's what we're doing here. So here is our conversion. So we're going to convert that IP address to a number. Then we're using this backshift, and the backshift is because we have this representation that we want to put in for those values. So we're going to backshift those decimals out, and then we have a whole number. So we're going to go ahead and use that, and then just make sure that we test that it is not null. So whenever you see that exclamation, that's not. So we're checking to make sure that we didn't get an empty value for it. So a lot of details to this one, and I don't mean to rush through it, but I'm just also trying to stay a little bit on time. So now that we have that, when we run this, we're going to now have those IP addresses if you watch with the conversion. So now we're going to do the conversion on those. So now we have those IP addresses also represented as decimal here. And we have both the login time and we have the previous login time. So we have eliminated maybe somebody that might have only logged in once, okay? And there's not a set pair for it because we're doing a land speed violation. So if they only logged in once, that's not going to be relevant to this. So then this part is where we're doing some conversion now back to the octets. So we need to convert that previous IP address back from the decimal form to the integer form back into the octet representation for a version 4 IP address. And with this, we just need to use these mathematical operators, and you can click to find out a little bit more about the floor and the power operators, but that's what we're using to convert them back. And I know this one probably takes some studying after today, but just kind of giving you the constructs and kind of the flow through it of what you would do. And you can see why we also are putting this in here, because so many of our customers really need this capability, and they might not have yet spent the time to actually create one of these. So you get it as a freebie today. I think somebody in our professional services group developed this for a customer. So you're also getting professional service hours that are provided here. All right, so now that we have converted the previous IP address back, and you can see the octets broken out here and then combined, which is what we did with the concatenation down here. That's the combiner. So that's basically gotten us to the point where now we can look up that IP address and calculate the speeds from those latitude and longitudes. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use the geo lookup just like we did in other ones, where we're going to look it up on both the IP and the previous IP. So you can see the first lookup is going to give you the IP, the second IP, and the second lookup is going to give you the previous one. So I'll go ahead and I'll paste those in. All right. And you won't actually see much other than you're going to get now in the display. You're going to get all of those values that were returned here, because you remember how the lookup works. These are the return values right here. So those are all, you can see them starting here: country name, lat, longe, country name 2 for the second IP, and its latitude and longitude. So we have both the first IP address and the previous IP address listed here. All right, for comparison, because now we're going to have to calculate distance and speed. So and I'm sorry the pictures aren't showing up, but this shows a world map with, an arc, because that's what the Haversine formula does, is it calculates distance using, arc mathematics. So we're actually grabbing that, calculating that distance using those values from the successive logins. So we're calculating those distances between them. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And you can see latitude 1, longitude 1, and latitude 2 and longitude 2 is what we're using in that Haversine formula. So if I go back here and paste in that formula, so this will calculate, on a world map, because, the distance would be in arc mathematics. Okay. All right, and that's okay. All right, and so now I have my distance, and you can see that at the very end, if you scroll over, my distance in kilometers that was just produced from that. All right, so hang in there, we're almost through. So now we want to detect, basically. So we realize that maybe the 500 kilometers per hour is difficult, right? For maybe at least a suspicious enough. And of course, you guys can adjust this number to whatever your company might want to use. So that might be suspicious enough to be a cause for further investigation. So in order to do that, we want to add to this query that speed, so we're just assigning 500 as suspicious speed. And then we're going to do a filtering on it, taking that apparent velocity that we got right up here. All right, so here we're calculating the apparent velocity. And so once we have that, then we just want to detect that speed. Anything greater than 500 will be considered suspicious. So I'm going to go ahead and copy both of these in here. Now, this one is actually doing a mathematical formula, just like we did with that percentage, using that ratio. So when I paste this in, still have it, there we go. This right here is taking that login time minus the previous login and dividing it by the number of seconds in a day, right? So now we're getting that computed then as our login time delta hours. So we're getting that total time. We need that so that we can calculate that distance, right? So we're going to take that, the speed, or velocity. So I'm taking that distance over time here, and I'm calculating the apparent velocity. And then I'm double checking, because obviously if I have 0 in the denominator, then my math's going to be messed up. So I need to make sure I remove any of those potentials from in here. So that's the calculation. And then this actual last one here is we're going to just test to make sure and filter out anybody that's any of these values that might be over 500 as a suspicious speed in step 9. All right, and paste that in. All right. So that might seem like enough, right? You can run this and hopefully it's still working just fine. But we also have formatting, and that's fine. It's just giving me that null value. It's okay. So what I'm getting down here is how to format this. So how do I want to display my information? So formatting is just as important as all this other clever algorithm that we just went through, because if you can't, I don't know how many times I've created something and then I spend, the last, I don't know, just the majority of my time just formatting something. It's such a pain in the butt sometimes. So I want to give you some ideas here on how you can format information. So to present it, first thing is we want to concatenate our IP address with the previous IP address, and then we're going to call that IP addresses. And this way, it just allows our report to read better, right? So that we can see the IP addresses combined as the IP addresses. And so you'll see that they'll be separated with a comma. That's what this does in the middle as a text string. We're just adding a text string in this concatenation. And then we want to basically verify that if our country name, is the same, then obviously there's not, a problem there. So we want to basically be able to see the 2 country names for each of the IP addresses, right? To see where they traveled from and to, potentially, right? Unless it's actually somebody that's suspicious, right? And then field user login, we're going to basically, this is a command called fields, which just dictates the order of everything being displayed. So that means the columns going across will be in this order. And then last, I'm just making sure that I filter. You've been noticing I'm getting that null. So I want to just make sure that I filter where my user is not null. And then I also want to make sure that my apparent velocity, is not equal to infinity, right? So I'm just making sure that I don't have that messed up velocity calculation here. And then I'm going to sort them by the velocity speed. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add all that formatting. I'll just go down here, put my last part of code in. All right, so is everybody wiping their foreheads? All right, let's go ahead and run it, and let's take a look at how our display now comes out. Now remember, this fields command is going to basically organize this so you can see that I'm getting user, then IP addresses, then countries, then distance. So here's where I get it all prettied up, right, with my format so that I can see what's going on. And there's all my, notice how I concatenated the countries. So I put that little comma in here with this concatenation command right here. And I'm also looking at my country's distance in kilometers and the login time delta and their apparent velocity. And so I'm seeing all the actor activity here and who's logged in multiple times and that sort of thing. So that's basically a land speed violation. And the way we're going to add this to the panel is we just want that pretty display in tabular form. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in, just clicking the add to the dashboard and just calling it land speed violations in the panel title. And this is our last one for the SOC dashboard. Okay. And then I'll just add it to that SOC dashboard. And there we go. All right, so now we have all of these in here for our 5 different labs that we just did. So what we want to do in the next lab is we want to actually play around a little bit with the filters here. So let me take you into that. Lab 6, we're going to do some investigation of this. So now that you have several dashboards, okay, now what we want to do is to apply search parameters that will allow you to filter down for the amount of information that's displayed. So we're going to add those lookup tables across the board. Now, obviously, for the one that's tracking console logins, it probably doesn't directly apply to that one. So just humor me on that one. But you guys can still, you'll get the idea of how pivot tables are set up, and you can create your lookup tables here. So the very first thing is, instead of just using a lookup table like in the earlier lab, we're going to actually create one. So you'll need to replace in here where it says this, your initials, you'll need to put your initials, like I'll put JS and then maybe 112, the number I've been using. All right, so go ahead and copy this, and we'll kind of talk through it as we paste it in. All right, add a new query here. So the first thing is we're going to create a lookup table. Show you how to do that. All right, and this will be in the database. So this will be actually there in the system. So we're pointing to our CloudTrail data to pull that in. We are parsing out basically the actor, okay? Then we're going to count by the actors. And then we're going to actually do some formatting where we're going to actually omit the underscore count. So I'm going to actually comment out these last two just to show them here in a second. I'll show you how to comment them in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and replace the section with my initials and that little number that I was using, just so I can find it very easily. All right, or if you just want to use your initials, you don't have to use the number. Now, to do multi-line comments, any of you guys know how to do a multi-line edit in the query builder? What you do is if you're on a PC, you would hold down the Alt key. You have to click somewhere in here and then hold down the Alt key, and you see the plus sign? Now, if you're on a Mac, then you would hold down the Options key. So you just click anywhere in here, it doesn't matter where in the query builder, hold down the Alt or the Options key. Then I want to add comments. I want to comment these 2 lines out. So I'm just going to drag with my mouse. I'm holding down my left click on my mouse and I dragged it down. Okay, so I just drag it down. So once I have the plus sign, I just go wherever I want and drag it across the multi-lines that I want to make a multi-line edit. Now I can do anything. I can type the word happy. I can put in what I want, which is 2 forward slashes to comment out these 2. The reason why I'm doing that is I want you to see what happens with the fields command. Because in that other one, it was kind of long, and I talked about the fields command, but here you can actually play with it a second. So notice that here in messages, if I go back to messages, you have time, actor, and message because we have counted by, we've extracted the actor, right? So we got that. And then we counted by actor. So we created the aggregate tab and we produced this underscore count to count up the actors, right? So now what if I want to rearrange this formatting? Because in this case, I don't want the count to be listed. I just want the actors. So I'm trying to create a lookup table with just the actors in there. So I want to remove, that's what the minus sign says. This removes the count and only leaves the actors. Now I can go and just clean this up and get rid of the last comment. And this save is going to actually create the shared lookup table for me. Now it's double checking. It always has this pop-up and I'm going to go ahead and say yes, because I want it to create it. Because you are adding to your data, you know, so it always asks you that because you're modifying your Sumo Logic data that's in your system. You're creating a lookup table by doing this save command. So now I've put all these actors into that. So probably you want to verify that that worked, right? So after you've done this, the way you can look at your lookup table is by using in step 3 this command. So we're going to cat our shared using your initials actor list table. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that, put it into a brand new query because you're just using this to query against the database to display it. So I paste that in. Now mine was, you have to make sure you're using the same name. So mine was JS112, I believe. And now when I run this, there's my actors. That's my lookup table that's embedded in. Okay. Somebody must have added this one. I've never seen that one before. It's interesting. Okay. All right. So now you've created a lookup table and you've also displayed it to verify that you have your lookup table. So if we go down here, the next thing we want to do is we want to actually go into our parameter setting and we want to click on that details icon and we want to go ahead and change in the manage parameter setting pop-up box that will appear. We want to actually verify, okay, that our default value equals an asterisk, okay, and set the values for parameters to a lookup format, okay? So we're going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to go into our parameters window. So if I go back over to my dashboard here, okay, so I go into my dashboard, or excuse me, my search window, right, with my, oh, I'm sorry, my dashboard. And you'll see that, trying to actually make sure, yeah, in the upper right of the panel. Okay, there we go. So right here, do you see where it has the 3 dots? If I click on that, okay. And that's going to actually allow me to, I can toggle the theme. So I can change it to the black. So you can actually, I just want to show a couple of things here. And you can go into edit mode if you want to make any changes in this. You can turn this, toggle this on to live mode if you want to make this a continuous query. Just remember that if you're running it continuously, that does count towards your data ingest. So I'm just kind of demoing this, but I'm going to go ahead and toggle it back. So in this lab, I want to change it for my lookups. So I need to go into my parameter window and I'm going to go ahead and change my lookup. Now I'm going to choose one of the panels in this case to actually change that for the lookup. So let's see, which one do I want to do? I'll go into the land speed violation one. And you see here with actor, okay, I would just click on this like we've done before and click on the manage parameter settings. And then the default value, we want that to equal the asterisk, okay? And then set values to parameter, we want to change it to lookup. And then we're going to point to the lookup file that we just created. And then we can just save it, okay? And we would do this actually for all of them. I'm going to just show it with one of them and demonstrate it. So if I go here, remember I expand the set values, and now I want to choose the lookup. So basically in this one, what we're covering is we've already actually done this before, but what we're trying to do is show you that you can go and create this for any of the panels. So mine had my little initials here, JS112. And then select the values. I would choose actor, it's the only one. And then I want to make sure this is none, okay? So that I'm basically not selecting those optional fields in there. And then I just save this. So this is what I would do if I wanted to customize any of these dashboard panels so that I could then pivot on actor across all of these different panels. Then you see where it says update dashboard? So I would want to update the dashboard on this. It's asking me if I want to change it. I just want to leave it as the 24 in my update. And then, of course, it's also telling me those filters already exist, which is fine. I don't want to rename them. I just want to use them all as common. Now, the reason why I'm using them all as common is because, once again, when we look at all of our incoming log messages, and I know that these are using Amazon CloudTrail for the purpose of these labs, but you can actually use that centralized log management, and then you can come in here and you can pivot at a very high level, and you can change the actor, and now we have the event type if I delete this one, you can now pivot to whatever you want. You just have to go through and customize these all as lookups, okay? So basically in mine, and it looks like I need to get out of that. I will go ahead and exit out of that. You can also pivot at each panel level, so that if you click on these filters here, that's what they do. And we kind of already showed this one in the past. But let's say you wanted to focus in maybe on this one to a particular IP address. You could also create a metadata tag up here in the filters, add that by creating a parameter for it, right? And you could filter on a specific IP address and toggle all the panels to that. So basically, that's what you can do, and that's the purpose of this, is how you can create those lookups and be able to filter at either the dashboard level